Welcome to History Teller YT, where we take you on a journey through time, uncovering the stories of legends, cultures, and the heroes who shaped the world we live in today. Today, we'll be diving into the fascinating story of Gomotan Sangira, a legendary Subanen leader who lived around the 17th and 18th centuries. His leadership, bravery, and deep connection to his people and their land set the foundation for a legacy that would last centuries. Throughout this narrative, you'll experience the courage of a warrior who not only defended his land from invaders, but also laid the groundwork for the survival and prosperity of his people. From his early days as a fearless swordsman to his role as the respected Thimue leader, Gomotan's story is one of resilience, wisdom, and the fight for cultural preservation. It's a journey of leadership, sacrifice, and community, where the values of unity, respect, and the protection of the land played a central role. If you've ever wondered how history shapes the present, or what it takes to lead and preserve a people's way of life in the face of adversity, then this history is for you. Stick around, because this is more than just a story. It's a testament to the enduring strength of the Subanen people, the legacy of a great leader, and the values that continue to guide them today. In the heart of the southern Zamboanga Peninsula, the Subanen people flourished under the leadership of Gomotan Sangira, who was born around 1650. From his early years, he was recognized for his strength and wisdom, gaining the title of Sangira, meaning the warrior leader whose sword never failed. Throughout his life, Gomotan defended his people against invaders, established peace through diplomatic alliances, and ensured the survival of their culture. His leadership was not just about protecting the land, but also about fostering a deep respect for nature, community, and tradition. His descendants, including his sons Palaganding and Rainding, carried on his legacy, navigating both military and diplomatic challenges and strengthening alliances that protected the Subanen lands from external threats. Despite the pressures of colonialism and the growth of industrialization, Gomotan's values of unity, cultural preservation, and respect for the environment remained central to the Subanen way of life. Today, the Subanen people continue to uphold these values, fighting for land rights and cultural preservation in the modern world. Their struggles for recognition, environmental justice, and maintaining their ancestral heritage reflect the enduring legacy of Gomotan Sangira, whose teachings still resonate across generations. Around the year 1650, in the fertile valley of Maguzin, nestled near the Cumularang River, a child was born into a noble Subanen family. This boy, named Gomotan Sangira, hailed from a lineage that had once ruled the southern Zamboanga Peninsula. His ancestor, Data Labangan, also known as Gomotan, was a legendary figure who had commanded vast lands and had a significant influence over the region. Gomotan's father, a respected Subanen elder, understood the weight of this heritage and raised his son with great expectations. The valley where Gomotan was born was not only rich in natural beauty, but also a site of deep spiritual importance to the Subanen people. The surrounding mountains, rivers, and forests were seen as sacred, and the community lived in harmony with nature, believing that the land, sky, and water were home to powerful spirits. Gomotan's early life was thus imbued with an acute sense of the spiritual world and an appreciation for the natural resources that sustained the Subanen way of life. From a young age, he was taught not only to honor the land, but also to understand the wisdom of his ancestors, which included martial prowess, diplomacy, and a reverence for the unseen forces that guided their fate. His name, Gomotan, was taken directly from his illustrious ancestor, and it symbolized the expectations that he would carry the mantle of leadership that had been laid down generations before him. The tradition of leadership within the Subanen community was not only a matter of familial lineage, but also of personal merit. A leader was not simply chosen by birthright, but by his ability to demonstrate wisdom, strength, and compassion. Young Gomotan, keenly aware of his heritage, began to show signs early on that he was destined for greatness. His father, seeing the boy's potential, started his training early, teaching him the ways of the warrior, the rituals of their people, and the arts of governance. His lessons in the sword were not just for combat, but also for discipline and understanding the delicate balance between strength and humility. Gomotan was taught the ways of swordsmanship from the age of 7, an essential skill for any young Subanen. In addition, his mother, a woman of noble blood, instilled in him a deep respect for the Subanen rituals, especially the religious ceremonies that honored both the ancestors and the spirits that guided the land. As Gomotan approached his teenage years, he began to grow into a formidable figure. He became known as a sharp-witted youth, quick to understand the intricacies of human interaction, diplomacy, and strategy. It was said that his mind was as sharp as the blade he carried. Around the age of 15, he had already earned the respect of the community and was frequently called upon to offer solutions during times of dispute. His ability to mediate and settle conflicts without resorting to violence spoke to a maturity far beyond his years. His training in warfare, combined with his growing wisdom, made him an ideal candidate to become a thimue, or leader. The title of thimue was not handed out lightly. It was reserved for those who demonstrated courage, leadership, and the ability to guide their people during both times of peace and conflict. By the age of 20, Gomotan was already being recognized as a natural-born leader. His prowess with the sword, his growing diplomatic skills, and his deep understanding of Subanen customs set him apart from other young men of his age. At the time, the Subanen communities were not without their conflicts. They were frequently under threat from neighboring tribes and outside invaders. Yet, Gomotan's family had always maintained a reputation for strong leadership, and the surrounding tribes knew the power and wisdom of the Subanen people. The elders saw that Gomotan had not only inherited his forefathers' strength, but also their wisdom. By the time he reached the age of 25, the elders had decided it was time to pass the mantle of leadership onto him. He was officially recognized as a thimue of his community. However, leadership was never just about titles. It was about the responsibility to protect, provide, and guide the people. Gomotan's rise to leadership came at a time of significant turmoil in the region. The peace that the Subanen had known for generations was being threatened by external forces, most notably the Maranao raiders, who would regularly launch attacks to seize captives and livestock. As these invaders grew bolder, the Subanen realized that the time for diplomacy and appeasement had passed. To protect their lands, they needed a leader who could unite the different Subanen clans and defend their way of life. Gomotan, with his martial prowess and leadership skills, quickly became the symbol of hope for the Subanen people. His sword, sharp as ever, would be raised not only to defend his people, but also to preserve the spiritual integrity of their land. It was during this time that the Subanen elders formally gave him the title of Sangira, a title that meant warrior leader whose sword never failed. This title was not just an accolade for Gomotan's skills in battle, but also a reflection of his role as the protector of his people. His success in defense, coupled with his deep understanding of Subanen traditions, meant that the Subanen were not only safe, but could also prosper in the face of adversity. As Gomotan embraced his new role, he knew that leadership meant sacrifice. His thoughts were always with the people and how best to protect them. His first challenge as thimue came in 1675, when the Maranao raiders launched a particularly aggressive assault on the Subanen settlements along the Cumularang and Lapuyan valleys. With no time to lose, Gomotan led a strategic defense, positioning warriors at key locations along the riverbanks to intercept the invaders. It was said that during this battle, Gomotan's tactics were so precise that the invaders, unable to outmaneuver him, were forced to retreat. By the time Gomotan Sangira reached his 20s, the Subanen people were facing significant threats from various enemy tribes. The Maranao, with their warlike nature, were particularly notorious for their raids on the Subanen territories. The once peaceful valleys of Lapuyan, Humalarang, and Gillian were being regularly attacked. These raids, which involved the Maranao stealing livestock, taking captives, and sowing discord, were beginning to destabilize the Subanen's way of life. The Subanen had long been a peaceful people, known for their agricultural and fishing practices, but the rising frequency of these raids meant that it was time for the community to prepare for conflict. Gomotan, already renowned for his swordsmanship and intelligence, was entrusted with leading the defense. The Subanen elders, recognizing his growing leadership potential, conferred upon him the title of Sangira, meaning warrior leader whose sword never failed. This title was not only an acknowledgement of his battle prowess, but also a reflection of his ability to lead and protect his people. Gomotan's early training as a warrior was essential in these tumultuous times. His mastery of the sword and his tactical acumen allowed him to command respect on the battlefield. But his true strength lay in his ability to unite the various Subanen clans, creating a formidable force that was determined to defend their land at all costs. As the Maranao raids became increasingly aggressive, Gomotan's leadership was tested time and again. He quickly became known as a leader who was unafraid to take charge, even in the most dangerous situations. His strategy involved not just brute force, but also careful planning. He understood the importance of positioning his warriors in strategic locations, using the natural terrain of the land to his advantage. His knowledge of the rivers, mountains, and forests surrounding his people allowed him to outmaneuver the enemy, forcing them to retreat when they had hoped to succeed. During these early battles, Gomotan's courage became legendary. He was not content to remain in the background, giving orders from a safe distance. Instead, he fought alongside his warriors, showing them the strength of his resolve. The sight of Gomotan leading the charge, sword in hand, inspired his people, and his bravery was contagious. His name spread quickly across the region, and even the most seasoned warriors of the Maranao began to recognize him as a formidable opponent. The Subanen were no longer seen as easy targets. Under Gomotan's leadership, they became a force to be reckoned with. As Gomotan's reputation as a warrior leader grew, so did the confidence of the Subanen people. His leadership was not solely defined by his ability to fight, but also by his wisdom and strategic thinking. He understood that battles were not only won with swords, but also with the hearts and minds of the people. Gomotan made it his mission to ensure that every warrior, regardless of age or experience, was well trained and prepared for any eventuality. Under his command, the Subanen formed a highly disciplined fighting force, with every individual knowing their role and their responsibility to the community. It was around 1682 when Gomotan faced one of the most defining moments of his leadership. A large force of Maranao raiders advanced towards the Subanen settlements, their objective clear: to pillage the rich lands and seize captives. The Subanen were caught off guard by the scale of the attack, but Gomotan, undeterred, rallied his people to take a stand. He understood that this raid was not just about material gain for the Maranao, but also about breaking the Subanen spirit. If they failed to defend their land, it could spell the end of their way of life. Gomotan's leadership during this time is remembered in Subanen oral traditions as the Battle of Gillian Hill, a pivotal event that would go down in history as a symbol of the Subanen people's resilience. Positioned on a hill near present-day Lapuyan, Gomotan and his warriors set up a defense that would force the Maranao to fight on their terms. By using the landscape to their advantage, the Subanen were able to ambush the Maranao raiders, sending them into disarray. The battle was long and fierce, with Gomotan fighting alongside his men, refusing to retreat even as the enemy pushed forward. His sword, as promised by the title of Sangira, never failed, and his warriors, inspired by his example, fought with a determination that would forever change the course of the conflict. The victory at Gillian Hill was a turning point in the Subanen-Maranao Wars. The Maranao, who had once thought of the Subanen as an easy target, now realized that the Subanen were a people who would fight to the death to protect their land. Gomotan's leadership had not only secured the safety of his people, but had also established his legacy as a warrior leader whose sword would always stand as a symbol of strength and courage. After the battle at Gillian Hill, Gomotan's status as a leader of great renown was solidified. But his leadership was not just about fighting off raiders. It was about ensuring the long-term survival and prosperity of his people. Gomotan understood that the Subanen people needed more than just defense. They needed a way to rebuild, thrive, and grow stronger. Under his guidance, the Subanen began to focus on agricultural development, expanding their farming techniques and improving their methods of irrigation. The fertile lands of Lapuyan, Humalarang, and Gillian, which had once been under constant threat, now became centers of agricultural activity. The strategic location of the Subanen people along the Humalarang River made it an ideal area for fishing and farming, and Gomotan recognized the importance of strengthening these industries to ensure the sustainability of the community. He worked with local farmers to improve crop yields, and the Subanen began to develop a surplus of goods that they could trade with neighboring groups. The wealth generated from agriculture allowed the Subanen to build stronger defenses and create alliances with nearby communities. As the years went by, Gomotan's leadership expanded beyond military defense and agricultural development. He also became a cultural and spiritual leader, guiding his people through rituals and ceremonies that connected them to their ancestors. The Subanen believed that their ancestors, including Gomotan's own forefathers, had a direct influence on their lives and the fate of their land. Gomotan, deeply connected to these traditions, made sure that the Subanen honored their spiritual customs, believing that their success in battle and peace was a result of maintaining these sacred practices. Throughout this period, Gomotan's leadership was characterized by a sense of unity. He forged strong alliances not only with neighboring tribes, but also within his own people. Under his rule, the Subanen flourished, and their communities became tightly knit, with a shared sense of purpose and a common goal: to protect their land, preserve their culture, and honor the legacy of their ancestors. In 1682, Gomotan Sangira faced one of the most defining challenges of his leadership: the battle at Gillian Hill. This battle would come to represent not only the Subanen's courage, but also their commitment to defending their ancestral lands at all costs. The Maranao, notorious for their raids on the Subanen lands, had been increasingly aggressive in their attempts to seize the fertile valleys of Lapuyan and Humalarang. This time, however, their plan was far more ambitious than previous raids. They aimed to break the spirit of the Subanen people and force them into submission. The Maranao raiders, having underestimated the unity and resolve of the Subanen, had mobilized a large force to attack the peaceful valley of Gillian. This valley, rich in resources and strategically located along the Humalarang River, had always been a place of prosperity for the Subanen. The Maranao sought to take advantage of this wealth, raiding the farms and fishing settlements that dotted the landscape. But they did not anticipate the fierce resistance they would encounter. Gomotan, understanding the gravity of the situation, quickly organized his warriors for defense. He knew that this battle was not just about defeating an enemy. It was about protecting the way of life for the Subanen people. Under his leadership, the Subanen warriors prepared for the confrontation with great discipline. They knew that their success depended not only on their combat skills, but also on their unity and unwavering belief in their cause. With the help of his sons, Palaganding and Rainding, Gomotan led his warriors to Gillian Hill, where the Maranao had already begun their assault. The Subanen warriors, though outnumbered, were determined to stand their ground. They took their positions strategically along the slopes of the hill, using the natural terrain to their advantage. The Maranao, accustomed to overpowering smaller tribes, were caught off guard by the Subanen's prepared defenses. The hill became a battlefield where the courage of the Subanen was put to the test, and the outcome would determine whether they would remain free or fall under the control of the Maranao. The battle at Gillian Hill was brutal, with both sides fighting fiercely for control of the valley. As the Maranao forces advanced, Gomotan and his sons led the charge, wielding their swords with unmatched skill. Gomotan's legendary sword, the Sangira, never faltered, cutting through the enemy ranks as he fought alongside his warriors. His leadership on the front lines was a beacon of strength for the Subanen, and his presence inspired his people to fight with a tenacity that matched his own. The Maranao, though skilled in battle, were unprepared for the tactical brilliance of Gomotan. He had chosen the battlefield with great care, positioning his forces on the high ground of Gillian Hill, where they could launch surprise attacks from hidden positions. The Subanen warriors, knowing the terrain intimately, were able to maneuver quickly, using the dense vegetation and rocky outcrops to their advantage. As the battle raged on, the Maranao began to lose ground. Their larger numbers were no match for the Subanen's superior tactics and unwavering resolve. Gomotan's forces used their knowledge of the terrain to outflank the enemy, striking when they least expected it. Despite being pushed back, the Maranao continued to fight, but their resolve began to waver as they realized that they were not facing an easy victory. The turning point came when Gomotan and his sons led a final charge down the hill, rallying the Subanen warriors with a battle cry that resonated throughout the valley. The Maranao, now disoriented and demoralized, began to retreat. The Subanen, with their superior knowledge of the land and the unshakable leadership of Gomotan, had successfully repelled the invaders. The battle was won, but it was not just a military victory. It was a testament to the strength and unity of the Subanen people, and it marked a pivotal moment in Gomotan Sangira's legacy. The victory at Gillian Hill was a monumental achievement for the Subanen people, and it cemented Gomotan Sangira's reputation as a fearless leader. It was not only a military triumph, but also a powerful message to all neighboring tribes that the Subanen were not to be taken lightly. The Maranao raiders, who had hoped to dominate the Subanen, were forced to retreat, and the news of their defeat spread quickly throughout the region. Gomotan's victory at Gillian Hill was not just a win for the Subanen, but for all indigenous peoples who faced the threat of invasion. In the aftermath of the battle, Gomotan's leadership was celebrated across Subanen territories. His sons, Palaganding and Rainding, played crucial roles in organizing the defense and ensuring that their people remained united in the face of adversity. The battle also served as a rite of passage for many young warriors who had fought alongside their elders and seen the strength of their community firsthand. The victory brought a sense of pride and renewal to the Subanen. The battle had shown them that they could defend their land against even the most formidable enemies, provided they remained united and fought with honor. It also reinforced the importance of leadership. Gomotan's ability to inspire his people to rise above the threat of invasion was central to their success. In the years that followed, Gomotan continued to lead his people with wisdom and courage. The Subanen, now stronger and more united than ever, flourished in the aftermath of their victory. The Maranao raids became less frequent, and the Subanen were able to focus on rebuilding and strengthening their communities. The victory at Gillian Hill would go down in history as one of the defining moments of Gomotan Sangira's leadership and a symbol of the resilience of the Subanen people. In the aftermath of the battle at Gillian Hill, the Subanen people found themselves not only victorious, but also imbued with a renewed sense of purpose. The defense of their land had proven their strength and unity, and the victory allowed them to focus on rebuilding and advancing their society. Under the leadership of Gomotan Sangira, the Subanen communities began to prosper as they had not in many years. The once threatened valleys of Lapuyan, Humalarang, and Gillian, which had long been subject to frequent raids, now flourished under Gomotan's guidance. The fertile land, rich with resources, was cultivated more efficiently, and the Subanen began to focus on agricultural innovation to ensure the long-term sustainability of their communities. The riverbanks, which had been vital for fishing, now also served as crucial trade routes, facilitating the exchange of goods and fostering economic growth. Gomotan, with his sharp strategic mind, realized that the prosperity of his people depended not only on defense, but also on the ability to create sustainable systems of resource management. He established more effective farming practices, introducing new crops and irrigation systems that maximized the fertility of the land. The Subanen became known for their agricultural expertise, and their produce was highly sought after by neighboring tribes. This newfound stability allowed the Subanen to focus on improving their quality of life. They built stronger, more resilient homes, crafted finer tools, and developed more intricate systems of governance. During this period, Gomotan's leadership extended beyond the battlefield. He recognized the importance of building strong relationships with neighboring tribes to secure a lasting peace. His wisdom and diplomacy was as sharp as his sword, and he skillfully navigated the complexities of tribal politics. By the late 1690s, the Subanen had established trade alliances with several neighboring communities, including the Jaloanos of Sulu, an influential group known for their maritime expertise. Gomotan's eldest son, Palaganding, took on a leading role in these trade negotiations. The Subanen, once a tribe primarily concerned with defense, were now becoming recognized as a key player in the region's economy. This period marked a significant turning point for the Subanen, as they went from being solely a community of warriors to becoming an established and influential economic force. Their trading ventures included the barter of carabaos, horses, and locally produced goods, which were exchanged for porcelain jars and other valuable commodities from Borneo. This exchange not only strengthened the Subanen's economic position, but also helped establish diplomatic ties that would protect them from future conflicts. The success of these trade relationships was a testament to Gomotan's vision, which combined the arts of warfare, governance, and diplomacy to secure the long-term survival of his people. By the year 1700, the Subanen people had entered a golden age of prosperity. Under Gomotan's guidance, the once war-torn and fragile communities of Lapuyan, Humalarang, and Gillian had grown into thriving, interconnected regions. The agricultural advancements made during Gomotan's leadership ensured that the Subanen were not only self-sufficient, but could now produce surpluses that allowed them to engage in long-distance trade. These surpluses also provided the Subanen with the resources they needed to fortify their defenses, ensuring that their territories would remain secure from outside threats. Gomotan's leadership also fostered a culture of unity within the Subanen people. The sense of community, which had been essential during the difficult times of constant raiding, became even more pronounced in the years following the victory at Gillian Hill. The Subanen believed that the strength of their society lay in their ability to come together, to protect one another, and to uphold the values that had been passed down through generations. They worked together in the fields, shared resources, and participated in communal ceremonies that reinforced their bonds. During this time, Gomotan's sons also began to assume greater leadership roles. His eldest son, Palaganding, was entrusted with overseeing the trade relations with other tribes and communities. He quickly proved himself to be a shrewd negotiator, following in his father's footsteps as both a warrior and a diplomat. Palaganding's diplomatic skills helped to further solidify the Subanen's relationships with their allies, and under his leadership, the Subanen began to trade goods like horses, carabaos, and local crafts for goods such as porcelain, textiles, and metal tools from neighboring regions. Reinding, Gomotan's second son, took on the role of overseeing the security and defense of the Subanen territories. His natural talents as a warrior and his unyielding dedication to his people made him the ideal leader for this responsibility. Reinding's leadership ensured that the Subanen were able to enjoy their prosperity without fear of external threats. Meanwhile, the youngest son, Gomd, was deeply involved in the intellectual and spiritual life of the community. His calm demeanor and wise counsel made him a trusted advisor to his father and brothers. Gomd's role was integral in maintaining the cultural and spiritual practices of the Subanen, ensuring that their traditions continued to thrive during this period of growth. The period between 1700 and 1710 was a time of relative peace and prosperity for the Subanen people. Their lands were secure, their economy was growing, and their culture was flourishing. Gomotan Sangira, though now in his later years, continued to lead his people with wisdom and foresight. He became known not just as a warrior leader, but as a patriarch who had ensured the survival and prosperity of the Subanen people. His vision for a united and self-sufficient Subanen society had come to fruition, and the fruits of his labor were evident in the thriving communities he had helped to build. As Gomotan entered his 50s, he began to take a more advisory role, relying on his sons to manage the day-to-day affairs of the community. His sons, Palaganding, Reinding, Gomd, and Bulaw, had all grown into strong leaders in their own right. They carried on their father's legacy, ensuring that the Subanen way of life continued to thrive. Gomotan's role as an elder and advisor was respected by all, and his counsel was sought in times of uncertainty. Though his active participation and leadership had decreased, his influence was still strongly felt. The Subanen people, now with a solid foundation of wealth, security, and culture, began to turn their focus toward ensuring the continuation of their way of life for future generations. This period saw an emphasis on education, as Gomotan and his family worked to pass on the knowledge of warfare, governance, and spiritual practices to the next generation. Gomotan understood that the future of the Subanen depended on the young, and he ensured that they were prepared to lead when the time came. At the same time, the Subanen people maintained a strong connection to their ancestral traditions. The Buklog, the most sacred of Subanen rituals, continued to be performed to honor the ancestors and seek guidance for the future. These ceremonies, deeply rooted in the spiritual life of the Subanen, became even more important during this time of prosperity, as they served as a reminder of the struggles that had brought the Subanen to this point and the need to remain vigilant in safeguarding their way of life. The golden age of the Subanen people, under Gomotan's leadership, would leave an indelible mark on their history. The prosperity, unity, and cultural richness that defined this period were direct results of Gomotan's foresight, determination, and commitment to his people. This was a time when the Subanen, under the leadership of Gomotan and his family, reached the height of their strength and influence, ensuring that their legacy would continue for generations to come. Gomotan Sangira's legacy was not solely defined by his military triumphs, but also by his family, who would carry forward his values of strength, wisdom, and leadership. By 1680, Gomotan had married a woman of noble Subanen lineage, a union that solidified his family's status and ensured that his descendants would continue to uphold the traditions of their people. Together, they had 4 children, each of whom would play a significant role in the future of the Subanen people. Their firstborn, Palaganding, arrived in 1681, followed closely by his twin brother, Reinding. The 2 brothers were inseparable, and from an early age, they were recognized for their exceptional talents, Palaganding for his diplomatic skills and Reinding for his prowess in battle. Gomotan, understanding the importance of securing the future of the Subanen, dedicated himself to raising his sons with the knowledge, values, and skills needed to lead. The early years of Palaganding and Rangding were marked by intense training in both the arts of warfare and the intricacies of Subanen leadership. Their father often led by example, teaching them not only how to wield a sword, but also how to be wise and just leaders. The brothers were not only warriors, but also custodians of the Subanen way of life, a responsibility that would become more important as they grew older. The third child, Gomotan, was born in 1685. Though quieter and more introspective than his brothers, Gomotan possessed a sharp intellect and a deep understanding of the spiritual traditions of the Subanen people. He became the spiritual anchor of the family, helping to ensure that their connection to the ancestral spirits remained strong. Gomotan's quiet wisdom and spiritual insight would later play a critical role in preserving the cultural heritage of the Subanen, especially during times of political and social change. The youngest of the four, Beulah, was born in 1688. As the only daughter, she held a special place in the family and was regarded as a symbol of unity among the Subanen clans. Beulah's marriage would prove to be a pivotal moment in the Subanen political landscape, as she married into the powerful Salimba clan of Dinas. This union strengthened the ties between the Subanen and the Salimba, providing both political and military advantages. As Gomotan raised his children, he ensured they were not only well-versed in the arts of war and leadership, but also in the customs and rituals that defined the Subanen identity. From a young age, they participated in religious ceremonies, including the sacred bucklog, where they learned the importance of honoring the ancestors and maintaining the spiritual connection to the land. This blend of martial and spiritual training formed the foundation of their leadership, ensuring that they would be prepared for any challenges that might arise in the future. As the 1690s unfolded, the Subanen people found themselves in a period of stability and growth, but this was also a time of increasing external pressures. The Maranao raids, though less frequent than before, still posed a threat to the Subanen's security, and there was a growing need for diplomatic alliances to maintain peace and protect their land. Gomotan, knowing that he could not defend his people alone, began to position his children to take on leadership roles in their respective fields. Palaganding, as the eldest son, naturally assumed the role of the primary leader and diplomat. His skills as a negotiator and his ability to forge strong relationships with other tribes were instrumental in expanding the Subanen's influence in the region. Palaganding's leadership was marked by his ability to build coalitions, forging alliances that ensured the Subanen people could trade freely and defend their lands without fear of outside interference. He was a master of diplomacy, and under his guidance, the Subanen enjoyed the benefits of thriving trade relations, most notably with the Jaloanos of Sulu. Through these alliances, the Subanen secured access to valuable resources, such as porcelain and textiles from Borneo, which were traded in exchange for livestock and agricultural products. Palaganding's success in trade also ensured that the Subanen economy continued to grow, allowing them to strengthen their military defenses and develop more sophisticated agricultural techniques. Rangding, Gomotan's second son, played a crucial role in the defense of the Subanen territories. His role as the protector of their land allowed Gomotan to focus on matters of governance and diplomacy. Rangding's reputation as a fierce warrior, much like his father, made him a natural leader in times of conflict. His tactical brilliance in battle, combined with his unwavering dedication to his people, ensured that the Subanen could withstand any external threat. Under his watch, the Subanen developed new defensive strategies that utilized the natural terrain to their advantage, making it increasingly difficult for invaders to penetrate their strongholds. While Palaganding and Rangding were focused on governance and defense, Gomotan, the third son, took on the role of a spiritual guide. His deep connection to the land and the ancestral spirits made him the spiritual leader of the family. Gom's wisdom was often sought in times of uncertainty, and his guidance was instrumental in preserving the cultural integrity of the Subanen people. His role was crucial, especially as the Subanen began to encounter new influences from neighboring tribes and external forces. Gom helped ensure that the spiritual practices of the Subanen remained a central part of their identity, even as they adapted to changing circumstances. Beulah, the youngest child, played a key role in strengthening the Subanen's political alliances. Her marriage to a member of the Salimba clan of Dinas not only solidified the bond between the two families, but also created a powerful political alliance that would benefit the Subanen for generations to come. Beulah's strategic marriage ensured that the Subanen would have the backing of one of the most powerful families in the region, providing them with both military and diplomatic advantages. Through this alliance, the Subanen were able to strengthen their position in the region, ensuring that they could continue to thrive and protect their way of life. By the end of the 1690s, Gomotan Sangira had ensured that his family was well positioned to lead the Subanen people into the future. His 4 children, each with their own unique strengths, formed a strong foundation for the continued prosperity and security of the Subanen territories. The family, united in purpose, was ready to take on the challenges of the new century, with each member playing an essential role in shaping the Subanen's destiny. Under Gomotan's leadership, the Subanen had built a strong and cohesive society. The alliance between Palaganding's diplomatic efforts, Rainding's military leadership, Gom's spiritual guidance, and Beulah's strategic marriage formed a multifaceted leadership structure that allowed the Subanen to remain strong and united. Each child carried forward their father's legacy, ensuring that the values of unity, resilience, and honor remained central to the Subanen way of life. The success of Gomotan's leadership was not only reflected in the strength of his family, but also in the lasting impact he had on the Subanen people. By establishing a system of governance that relied on both the wisdom of elders and the energy of youth, Gomotan ensured that the Subanen would continue to thrive long after his time. His family's legacy would become intertwined with the future of the Subanen, and their leadership would continue to guide their people through the trials and triumphs of the coming years. Through the efforts of Gomotan and his descendants, the Subanen remained a resilient and prosperous people whose traditions, culture, and values would be passed down for generations. The family's contributions to the Subanen legacy were integral in shaping the future of their community, ensuring that the principles of Gomotan Sangira lived on long after his death. The early 1700s marked a turning point for the Subanen people. Under Gomotan Sangira's leadership, the Subanen had successfully defended their land from invaders, and their economic prosperity was beginning to attract the attention of other tribal groups. The previously isolated Subanen territories were now integral to regional trade networks, and Gomotan's children, particularly his eldest son, Palaganding, took on pivotal roles in advancing these relationships. Palaganding's diplomatic skills were put to the test as he engaged in trade negotiations with the Jaloanos of Sulu, a powerful and influential group. By around 1705, Palaganding had succeeded in establishing a flourishing trade relationship with the Jaloanos, an alliance that brought tremendous benefits to the Subanen people. The exchange of goods between the two groups was vital for both economic and cultural growth. The Subanen, traditionally farmers and fishermen, now had access to valuable trade commodities from Sulu, including porcelain jars from Borneo, textiles, and other luxury items. In return, the Subanen traded carabaos, horses, and other agricultural goods, which were highly sought after by the Jaloanos. The expansion of trade brought with it new opportunities and challenges for the Subanen people. Their newly established wealth allowed them to improve infrastructure, develop better agricultural tools, and enhance their security, ensuring their continued prosperity. However, The increased trade also brought the attention of outside powers, particularly from colonizing forces. The Subanen, though prosperous, were keenly aware that their success could make them targets for conquest. Despite this, Gomotan's children were committed to maintaining the peace and securing the future of the Subanen. Palaganding's diplomatic negotiations were crucial in keeping the region stable, while Rainding, his brother, focused on maintaining the security of their lands. During this time, the Subanen people also saw the rise of the younger generation of warriors, who, inspired by the leadership of their elders, began to take on greater responsibilities in defense and diplomacy. Gomotan, while still a respected elder, had begun to take a step back from the day-to-day leadership, trusting his sons to carry the mantle of leadership. His focus was now on advising and guiding the next generation, ensuring that they remained true to the Subanen way of life. With the family in strong leadership roles, the Subanen felt secure in their ability to navigate both the challenges of trade and the threats posed by outside forces. As trade flourished under Palaganding's leadership, the Subanen's relationship with the Jaloanos of Sulu became increasingly important. This trade was not only a means of economic advancement, but also served as a symbol of the Subanen's growing influence in the region. The alliance with the Jaloanos allowed the Subanen to expand their reach, and Gomotan's family began to wield greater political power. Palaganding's diplomatic savvy and Rainding's military strength complemented each other perfectly, creating a balanced leadership structure that was both respected and feared. Rainding, in particular, worked tirelessly to fortify the Subanen defenses, ensuring that their lands would remain safe even as trade and outside influence expanded. However, the arrival of foreign powers, particularly the Spanish, added complexity to the region's political landscape. The Spanish, who had been expanding their influence in the southern Philippines, posed a new challenge for the Subanen. Unlike the Maranao and other neighboring tribes, the Spanish brought with them advanced weaponry and a colonial agenda. Gomotan and his sons knew that maintaining the balance of power would require not only military strength, but also strategic alliances. It was during this period that Gomotan's role as a respected elder became invaluable. Though no longer at the forefront of battle, his wisdom and experience were critical in advising his children on how to handle the growing presence of the Spanish. In this turbulent time, the Subanen people continued to hold strong to their traditional values. They were not only defenders of their land, but also stewards of their culture. The balance between warfare, diplomacy, and culture was essential to the survival of the Subanen way of life. Gomotan's leadership during this period became a model of resilience and adaptability. His ability to lead his people through both times of peace and conflict ensured that the Subanen were able to thrive in an increasingly complex and dangerous world. While the external threats loomed larger during the first decade of the 18th century, the Subanen people continued to flourish in many ways. The strategic leadership of Gomotan's sons ensured that they maintained a delicate balance between trade and defense. The Subanen maintained strong trade relations not only with the Jaloanos, but also with other neighboring tribes, securing valuable resources that allowed them to continue prospering. However, it was clear that the balance of power in the region was shifting. With the Spanish moving deeper into the southern Philippines, the Subanen faced the challenge of defending their autonomy while navigating the complexities of colonial interests. This period saw the growth of new alliances as well. The marriage of Gomotan's daughter, Beulah, to a member of the Salimba clan of Dinas was a critical step in strengthening the Subanen's political influence. The Salimba clan, a powerful family in the region, helped to secure the Subanen's position in a world increasingly dominated by outside forces. Beulah's union with the Salimba clan created a robust political network that allowed the Subanen to continue negotiating from a position of strength. By 1710, the Subanen people had established themselves as a formidable force in the region, thanks to the combined efforts of Gomotan's descendants. Palaganding's diplomatic skill, Randing's military leadership, Gon's spiritual wisdom, and Beulah's strategic marriage had transformed the Subanen from a tribal community into a respected political and economic power. The leadership of Gomotan Sangira had paved the way for a thriving, secure, and culturally rich society. Even as external forces began to challenge their way of life, the legacy of Gomotan Sangira and his family ensured that the Subanen would remain a strong and resilient people. His ability to balance warfare, diplomacy, and culture was the key to the Subanen's continued success. The marriage alliances that Gomotan Sangira orchestrated for his children were as strategically significant as his military and diplomatic endeavors. These unions not only strengthened the family's political position, but also ensured the long-term stability of the Subanen people. In particular, the marriage of his daughter, Beulah, to a prominent member of the Salimba clan of Dinas was one of the most crucial decisions made during this time. The Salimba clan, with their considerable influence and power, were an essential ally in maintaining the Subanen's autonomy. This union, forged through diplomacy, brought together two influential families, creating a bond that would shape the future of the Subanen and their allies. Beulah's marriage was not just a personal union, but a political maneuver that secured the Subanen's place in the rapidly changing power dynamics of the region. The Salimba clan, with their extensive network of allies and their strategic position in the region, provided the Subanen with the backing they needed to withstand external pressures. The political and military benefits of this alliance were immediate, as the Salimba clan's influence helped solidify the Subanen's standing among neighboring tribes and the rising colonial powers. Beulah, though still a young woman, quickly became a key figure in this alliance, working with her new family to strengthen the bonds between the Subanen and the Salimba. Her marriage was a symbol of the Subanen people's resilience and adaptability. Gomotan, who had spent years defending his people from external threats, now used diplomacy as a tool to ensure their survival in a changing world. The marriage not only strengthened political ties, but also helped to secure the Subanen's economic future. With the Salimba clan's support, the Subanen were able to expand their trade routes and enhance their economic activities, ensuring that their people would continue to thrive despite the growing influence of the Spanish and other colonial powers. Beulah's strategic marriage exemplified the Subanen's ability to navigate the complexities of both internal and external politics, and it ensured that the Subanen family would remain a central force in the region for years to come. The strategic marriages that Gomotan facilitated did not end with Beulah. His other children, Palaganding, Randing, and Gomd, also formed alliances that further solidified the Subanen people's political and military influence. Palaganding, the eldest son, focused on strengthening the Subanen's diplomatic ties, building on the trade relationships that had been established during his father's leadership. His marriage, while not as politically dramatic as Beulah's, served to reinforce his role as the diplomatic leader of the Subanen. Palaganding's ability to navigate complex tribal politics was instrumental in maintaining the peace in the region, as he worked tirelessly to prevent conflicts and ensure the Subanen remained in good standing with neighboring tribes and external powers. Randing, the second son, focused on the military strength of the Subanen. His leadership in defending their territories was critical during a period when the Subanen were faced with both external threats and internal challenges. While Randing did not form as many formal alliances through marriage as his siblings, his military prowess and leadership made him an indispensable figure in the Subanen community. His ability to command and inspire loyalty among the warriors was unmatched, and he was instrumental in maintaining the security of the Subanen lands. Gomd, the youngest son, took a more spiritual and intellectual approach to leadership. While he was less involved in the political and military aspects of governance, His role in preserving the Subanen culture and spiritual traditions was equally important. Gome's wisdom was sought after in times of uncertainty, and his counsel helped guide the Subanen through both internal and external challenges. His role as a spiritual leader helped ensure that the Subanen people remained grounded in their traditions, even as their political and economic influence grew. Together, Gomotan's children formed a powerful leadership team that was able to balance the demands of diplomacy, defense, and cultural preservation. The family's strategic marriages and alliances allowed them to maintain control over their lands and ensure the prosperity of the Subanen people. Their unity and shared vision for the future helped the Subanen thrive during a time of increasing external pressure. With the alliances formed through marriage, the Subanen people were able to secure their place in the region, ensuring that their way of life would continue for generations to come. The marriage alliances that Gomotan Sangira facilitated were more than just strategic. They were a testament to the Subanen people's resilience in adapting to changing circumstances. The growing influence of external powers, particularly the Spanish, made it clear that the Subanen could not rely solely on military might to protect their way of life. Diplomacy, alliances, and strategic marriages became just as important as the sword in ensuring the Subanen's survival. Gomotan, a leader who had fought countless battles to defend his people, understood that the future of the Subanen depended on their ability to adapt to the changing world around them. The alliances created through these marriages also had cultural significance. They strengthened the ties between different Subanen clans and fostered a sense of unity that transcended individual family interests. The Subanen people, once divided into smaller, more isolated clans, now found themselves united under a common cause to preserve their way of life, defend their land, and ensure the survival of their traditions. As the 1700s progressed, these alliances proved to be instrumental in maintaining the Subanen's autonomy. The marriage between Bulaw and the Salimba clan, in particular, provided the Subanen with the support they needed to withstand the increasing pressures from colonial forces. The Salimba clan, with their influence in the region, acted as a powerful ally against the Spanish and other external threats. The Subanen, with their alliances firmly in place, were able to maintain their independence and continue their trade activities without fear of invasion. In this way, Gomotan's vision for the Subanen people, though rooted in the strength of the sword, was also deeply informed by the strategic use of diplomacy and alliances. The leadership of his children, through their marriages and political maneuvering, ensured that the Subanen would remain a powerful force in the region, capable of resisting external pressures and safeguarding their traditions for generations to come. The legacy of Gomotan Sangira was one of strength, wisdom, and adaptability, qualities that were embodied not only in his military prowess, but also in his ability to navigate the complexities of politics and culture. By the year 1710, Gomotan Sangira, though still a revered figure, had entered the later years of his life. His physical strength, once unmatched, had begun to fade, but his wisdom and influence over the Subanen people remained as strong as ever. His sons, Palaganding, Rainding, Gomd, and Bulaw, had all grown into capable leaders in their own right, ensuring that the Subanen people were in good hands. Though he had stepped back from direct leadership, Gomotan remained a key advisor to his children and the Subanen elders. His reputation as a wise and experienced leader ensured that his counsel was sought on all matters of importance. During this time, the Subanen people continued to live in relative peace, their lands secure and their trade flourishing. Under the leadership of his sons, the Subanen expanded their influence and maintained strong alliances with neighboring tribes. Palaganding's diplomatic skill and Rainding's military expertise ensured that the Subanen remained a respected power in the region. Gomd, with his spiritual wisdom, continued to guide the community in maintaining its deep connection to its ancestral traditions. Beulah, with her marriage to the Salimba clan, ensured that the Subanen's political ties remained strong and that the family's influence extended beyond the immediate territories. Despite the growing prosperity, the looming presence of colonial powers, particularly the Spanish, was always a concern. The Subanen knew that their autonomy could not be taken for granted. The Spanish had begun to establish a stronger foothold in the southern Philippines, and their expanding influence posed a threat to the independence of many indigenous groups. Gomotan, though now an elder, understood that the Subanen's survival would depend on their ability to navigate the complexities of colonialism. He worked closely with his sons to develop strategies that would allow the Subanen to maintain their independence while minimizing the risks of confrontation. His advice was crucial during this period, as his experience with both warfare and diplomacy provided a roadmap for his children to follow. Despite his advancing age, Gomotan continued to take part in key ceremonies, including the sacred bucklog, which honored the ancestors and the land. These rituals, deeply ingrained in Subanen culture, were a way of ensuring the spiritual well-being of the community and reinforcing the bond between the living and the dead. Gomotan's presence at these ceremonies served as a reminder to his people of the importance of their traditions and the need to protect the spiritual and cultural legacy of their ancestors. By 1715, Gomotan's health had begun to deteriorate, and his role as an active leader had diminished further. Yet, his influence continued to guide the Subanen, and his sons had grown into powerful leaders in their own right. Paliganding, now fully in control of the Subanen territories, had taken on the mantle of leadership with the same vision and commitment to his people that his father had once demonstrated. Randing's military expertise ensured that the Subanen's lands remained secure from external threats, while Gon's spiritual guidance kept the people grounded in their customs and traditions. Beulah's strategic marriage to the Salimba clan had proven to be one of the most pivotal alliances of the Subanen era. The Salimba clan, with their political power and military prowess, had helped ensure that the Subanen remained strong in the face of external pressures. Beulah, though not as publicly visible as her brothers, played a critical role in strengthening the political ties between the Subanen and their allies. Her children, born of this union, would carry the legacy of the Subanen family forward. As Gomotan grew older, he spent more time reflecting on the past and contemplating the future. His thoughts were often with the next generation of Subanen leaders. He knew that his time was drawing to a close, but he took solace in the knowledge that the Subanen people were in capable hands. The future of the Subanen, he believed, was secure in the hands of his children. Despite his declining health, Gomotan remained a presence in the community. His counsel was still sought after by the leaders of neighboring tribes and by the Subanen elders. He continued to serve as an advisor, offering guidance on matters of diplomacy, defense, and tradition. His wisdom was invaluable during this time of transition, as the Subanen people faced new challenges in a rapidly changing world. In the final years of his life, Gomotan's role as a spiritual leader became more pronounced. He was deeply involved in the performance of rituals and ceremonies that honored the ancestors and sought blessings for the future. His connection to the spiritual world, which had been a cornerstone of his leadership throughout his life, remained strong, and he passed down these sacred teachings to his children and grandchildren. Gomotan Sangira passed away around 1720 at nearly 70 years old. His death marked the end of an era for the Subanen people. For decades, he had been the guiding force behind their survival and prosperity, and his passing left a deep void in the community. His sons, however, had been trained well under his tutelage and continued to lead the Subanen with the same vision and dedication that he had shown throughout his life. The Subanen people mourned Gomotan's death with the highest honor, performing the bucklog ceremony, which was reserved for their greatest leaders. The ceremony, which included songs, dances, and offerings to the ancestors, was a way of ensuring that Gomotan's spirit would be honored and remembered. His passing was a moment of reflection for the Subanen, as they looked back on the remarkable life he had led and the legacy he had created. Gomotan's death did not signal the end of his influence. However, his legacy lived on through his children and grandchildren, who continued to uphold the values and traditions that he had instilled in them. The Imbing, Homeland, and Lingating clans, descended from Gomotan's sons and daughter, remained powerful and respected throughout the region. The bonds between these clans, forged through the leadership of Gomotan, ensured that the Subanen people remained strong, united, and capable of resisting external threats. The spirit of Gomotan Sangira, it was said, never truly left the Subanen people. His teachings, his courage, and his wisdom continued to guide them, even in the years following his death. When the bucklog was performed, the elders would often say that Gomotan's spirit was present, watching over his descendants with pride. His legacy, which had been built on the principles of strength, unity, and respect for tradition, would continue to shape the Subanen people for generations to come. Through the years, the Subanen would face new challenges, but the strength of their ancestors, embodied by Gomotan Sangira, remained a source of resilience and inspiration. His life had been a testament to the enduring power of leadership rooted in wisdom, honor, and the unwavering belief in the protection of one's land and culture. Even as the world around them changed, the Subanen held fast to the legacy of Gomotan, ensuring that his name would live on in their hearts and in their songs for centuries to come. Gomotan Sangira's death in 1720 marked the end of an era for the Subanen people, but his legacy continued to shape the community for generations. His leadership, both in times of war and peace, had solidified the Subanen's place in the region. His sons and descendants, each carrying the lessons he imparted, ensured that his influence would never fade. In the decades following his death, the Subanen remained strong, united, and resilient, navigating the growing pressures of colonialism and the shifting power dynamics of the region. The legacy of Gomotan's leadership was deeply embedded in the culture of the Subanen. His name was remembered in songs, stories, and ceremonies that celebrated his achievements and the strength of his people. The bucklog ceremony, which had been performed to honor Gomotan during his lifetime, became an annual ritual in which the community came together to pay tribute to their ancestors and reaffirm their commitment to the traditions that had been passed down through generations. In these ceremonies, the spirit of Gomotan was believed to be present, watching over his descendants and offering guidance to those who sought it. The descendants of Gomotan, particularly his sons and daughter, became the pillars of Subanen society. Palaganding, the eldest son, carried on his father's diplomatic work, ensuring that the Subanen maintained their alliances and strengthened their political standing in the region. Rainding, with his military expertise, continued to lead the defense of their lands, ensuring that the Subanen remained secure from external threats. Gomd, though less publicly visible, played a crucial role in preserving the spiritual and cultural traditions of the Subanen people. His wisdom and guidance helped maintain the deep connection to the land and ancestors that had been central to Gomotan's leadership. Bulaw, Gomotan's daughter, became the matriarch of the Subanen family, and through her marriage to the Salimba clan of Dinas, the family's political alliances were strengthened. The Salimba clan, with their significant influence and military power, continued to be a valuable ally, and Bulaw's descendants played a central role in ensuring the survival and prosperity of the Subanen. The bonds between the Imbing, Homeland, and Lingating clans, all descended from Gomotan's children, became even stronger, forming a united front that would protect their lands and preserve their way of life as the 18th century progressed. the Subanen people faced new challenges. But the leadership established by Gomotan and carried forward by his descendants ensured that they remained a resilient and influential force in the region. The increasing presence of Spanish colonial forces in the southern Philippines threatened the independence of many indigenous groups. But the Subanen, under the guidance of Gomotan's children, were able to navigate the complexities of colonial rule with remarkable success. Palaganding, having assumed the role of the primary leader, continued his diplomatic work with neighboring tribes and colonial powers, ensuring that the Subanen retained their autonomy. His leadership was characterized by his ability to balance the needs of his people with the political realities of colonialism. While the Spanish sought to impose their control over the region, Palaganding maintained a delicate balance, forging alliances with other indigenous groups, and even negotiating with the Spanish to ensure that the Subanen were able to preserve their lands and traditions. Reinding, with his military prowess, continued to lead the defense of the Subanen territories. While the Maranao raids had diminished over the years, the Spanish posed a new and more formidable threat. Reinding's role as a warrior leader became crucial in these times, as he was able to rally the Subanen people to defend their land when necessary. His tactical expertise and knowledge of the terrain allowed the Subanen to remain a strong defensive force, even in the face of more advanced colonial forces. Gomd, the spiritual leader of the family, continued to play a vital role in preserving the Subanen culture. His guidance ensured that the spiritual practices of the Subanen remained intact, even as external influences began to encroach upon their way of life. Gomd's role as a spiritual guide was particularly important during this time, as the Subanen needed to hold fast to their traditions in order to withstand the pressures of colonization. His teachings about the importance of ancestral connections and spiritual practices helped to anchor the Subanen community in the face of external challenges. Beulah, the matriarch of the family, continued to work closely with the Salimba clan, strengthening political ties and ensuring that the Subanen's alliances remained strong. Her role as a connector between different Subanen clans and powerful political families made her an indispensable figure in the ongoing preservation of the Subanen's independence. By the early 19th century, the Subanen people had established themselves as a resilient and influential group in the southern Philippines. Though the region had undergone significant changes, the Subanen continued to thrive, largely due to the strong leadership provided by the descendants of Gomotan Sangira. The legacy of Gomotan was woven into every aspect of Subanen society, from their military tactics and political alliances to their spiritual practices and cultural traditions. The Subanen, under the leadership of the Imbing, Hominis, and Lingating clans, remained an important force in the region. Despite the growing presence of colonial powers, the Subanen were able to maintain their independence and protect their way of life. Their ability to adapt to changing circumstances while remaining true to their traditions allowed them to survive in a world that was increasingly dominated by foreign forces. The name of Gomotan Sangira continued to be honored in Subanen songs, stories, and rituals. His legacy lived on through his descendants, who upheld the values of unity, strength, and resilience that he had instilled in them. The Imbing, Hominis, and Lingating clans became symbols of the enduring strength of the Subanen people. Through their leadership, the Subanen continued to thrive, ensuring that the culture and traditions of their ancestors would never be forgotten. Even in the face of colonial oppression and the rise of new political powers, the spirit of Gomotan Sangira remained alive in the hearts of the Subanen people. His teachings about leadership, unity, and the protection of the land and traditions continued to inspire future generations. The Subanen, whose identity had been shaped by the leadership of Gomotan, stood as a testament to the strength of their heritage and the enduring power of their culture. Following the death of Gomotan Sangira in 1720, the Subanen people entered a new era, one marked by continued stability but also growing challenges. The leadership of Gomotan's descendants, particularly his sons Palaganding, Reinding, and Gomd, ensured that the Subanen community remained united and strong. These leaders, each representing a different aspect of Subanen society, worked together to maintain the prosperity that had been established under their father. While the Subanen continued to thrive in the early 18th century, they also faced increasing pressure from external forces, particularly from the growing influence of Spanish colonialism in the southern Philippines. The Spanish had long sought to establish their dominance over the archipelago, and by the mid-18th century, their presence was becoming more pronounced in Mindanao and its surrounding islands. However, the Subanen, under the leadership of Gomotan's heirs, remained committed to preserving their independence. The leadership of Palaganding, with his diplomatic acumen, was essential in maintaining the Subanen's political autonomy. He continued the work his father had started by forging and strengthening alliances with neighboring tribes and communities. These alliances were not only crucial for trade, but also for maintaining the balance of power in the region. By collaborating with other indigenous groups, the Subanen ensured that they would not be isolated in the face of colonial expansion. Palaganding's role as a diplomat was vital during this period of colonial encroachment, as he worked to negotiate with both local tribes and foreign powers to secure the Subanen's place in the region. His efforts helped to ensure that the Subanen were able to continue thriving, despite the pressures from outside forces. While Palaganding focused on diplomacy, his brother Reinding remained the chief military leader of the Subanen. His role was particularly important as the Spanish began to intensify their military efforts in Mindanao. Reinding continued to protect the Subanen territories, utilizing both traditional warfare tactics and the strategic use of terrain to keep their enemies at bay. His military expertise ensured that the Subanen people remained safe from the threat of invasion. Reinding's leadership in defense was crucial to the survival of the Subanen way of life, as he was able to repel Spanish incursions and maintain the security of their lands. The efforts of Palaganding and Reinding were supported by Gomd, who, though not as directly involved in military or diplomatic affairs, played an essential role in maintaining the spiritual and cultural traditions of the Subanen. Gomd's wisdom and deep knowledge of Subanen spiritual practices ensured that the people's connection to their ancestors and the land remained strong. His role as a spiritual leader allowed him to guide his people through times of uncertainty, offering counsel rooted in tradition and belief. Gomd's guidance was especially important as the Subanen faced increased contact with colonial powers, which sought to impose foreign ideologies and religious practices. Gomd's leadership in maintaining Subanen's spiritual practices ensured that the community's identity was preserved despite external pressures. During this time, the Subanen continued to rely on their traditional ways of governance, which emphasized community involvement and respect for the elders. The leadership structure, established by Gomotan, remained intact, with the Thimue, chief, as the central authority. The Thimue was responsible for making important decisions regarding defense, diplomacy, and internal governance. The role of the Thimue was not only to lead in times of war, but also to ensure that the community remained united and its traditions upheld. The leadership of the Thimue, supported by the elders and the warriors, helped to ensure that the Subanen remained strong and resilient, even in the face of growing external challenges. The Subanen people also continued to practice the buklog, the sacred ritual that honored their ancestors and maintained their spiritual connection to the land. The buklog was an essential part of Subanen life, as it reaffirmed the community's ties to their cultural heritage and provided a sense of unity. The ritual served as both a spiritual and social gathering, bringing the Subanen people together to celebrate their shared history and to seek guidance for the future. By the late 18th century, the the Subanen had successfully maintained their independence, largely due to the strength of their leadership and their ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Despite the growing presence of the Spanish and other colonial powers, the Subanen people remained a proud and resilient force in the region. Their ability to preserve their culture, traditions, and autonomy was a testament to the legacy of Gomotan Sangira and his descendants. The 19th century saw the continuation of the Subanen people's struggle to preserve their way of life in the face of increasing colonial pressures. As the Spanish solidified their control over much of Mindanao, the Subanen were forced to find new ways to maintain their independence. The leadership of Palaganding, Rainding, Gomd, and Bulaw, the children of Gomotan Sangira, was crucial during this time. Their ability to balance diplomacy, defense, and cultural preservation allowed the Subanen to survive and even thrive in an increasingly difficult environment. In the early 1800s, the Subanen continued to rely on their strong alliances with neighboring tribes and communities. These alliances were essential in maintaining the Subanen's position in the region, as they provided military support and helped to ensure that the Subanen were not isolated in the face of external threats. The Subanen also continued to engage in trade with other indigenous groups and with colonial powers, ensuring that their economy remained strong. Despite the pressures from the Spanish, the Subanen maintained their agricultural practices, producing surplus goods that were traded for valuable resources such as metal tools, textiles, and porcelain. By the mid-1800s, the Subanen had firmly established themselves as one of the most resilient indigenous groups in Mindanao. They had weathered the challenges of Spanish colonialism and had successfully maintained their autonomy. The legacy of Gomotan Sangira lived on in the leadership of his descendants, who continued to uphold the values of strength, unity, and respect for tradition that had been central to the Subanen way of life. The leadership of the Subanen people, now carried by the next generation of leaders, ensured that their cultural heritage remained intact. Through their ongoing resistance to colonial rule and their commitment to preserving their traditions, the Subanen people exemplified the strength of their ancestors. The leadership of Gomotan and his family had laid the foundation for a resilient and proud community that would continue to survive and thrive for generations to come. The spirit of Gomotan Sangira, with his wisdom, strength, and unwavering commitment to his people, remained a guiding force for the Subanen as they navigated the challenges of the 19th century. The dawn of the 20th century marked a period of profound change for the Subanen people. Having survived centuries of external threats, including Maranao raids and Spanish colonial rule, the Subanen were once again facing the challenge of maintaining their autonomy and way of life, this time under the growing influence of American colonial forces. The Philippines had been ceded to the United States after the Spanish-American War in 1898, and American influence in the southern islands of Mindanao, where the Subanen lived, began to expand rapidly. Despite these shifts in power, the Subanen remained a resilient force in the region. The lessons of leadership passed down through generations, especially those taught by Gomotan Sangira, continued to guide the Subanen people. The unity established by Gomotan's descendants, the Imbing, Hominis, and Lingating clans, remained strong. The central leadership structure, anchored by the Thimue chief, remained intact, even as the Subanen faced new challenges. The role of the Thimue was still crucial, as it served as the cornerstone of governance and unity among the Subanen communities. The Thimue, traditionally chosen from the prominent clans, was responsible for making key decisions related to defense, diplomacy, and community well-being. The position of the Thimue was more important than ever during this time, as the Subanen had to navigate the complexities of colonial rule while preserving their traditions. In the early 1900s, the Subanen people continued to live primarily as farmers and fishermen, relying on the rich natural resources of the land and rivers. The landscape, still abundant with forests and fertile soil, provided the Subanen with the means to sustain themselves. However, the rise of American control in the Philippines brought with it the introduction of new economic policies that disrupted the traditional ways of life. The American colonial administration encouraged the exploitation of natural resources, such as timber and minerals, which began to encroach upon Subanen lands. As mining and logging companies moved into Mindanao, the Subanen found their territories increasingly threatened. The Subanen people were once again faced with the challenge of defending their land from external interests. Despite these pressures, the Subanen were determined to preserve their way of life. Their sense of unity, fostered by the leadership of Gomotan's descendants, allowed them to withstand the challenges posed by colonial forces. The Subanen community, though small in number, had remained a powerful symbol of resistance in the region, particularly in the face of increasing pressure from both external colonial forces and the shifting economic landscape. As the American colonial government sought to modernize and control the southern Philippines, the Subanen people found themselves in the midst of a rapidly changing world. New roads were built, towns were established, and the economy began to shift towards cash crops and the exploitation of natural resources. The introduction of Western education and the spread of Christianity presented another challenge to the Subanen people's traditional way of life. American schools began to replace traditional methods of learning, and Christian missionaries sought to convert the indigenous peoples of Mindanao. The Subanen leadership, however, remained strong in their resistance to cultural assimilation. They maintained their commitment to their spiritual beliefs and ancestral practices, which were deeply intertwined with their sense of identity. The bucklog ceremony, which had been passed down through generations, remained a central part of Subanen life. The ceremony, held to honor the ancestors and the land, continued to be an expression of resistance against the encroaching forces of colonization. The Subanen's resistance to cultural assimilation was also evident in their continued use of their native language, which remained a vital part of their identity. While many other indigenous groups had lost their languages due to the pressures of colonialism, the Subanen remained fiercely protective of their linguistic heritage. This preservation of language and culture was a direct continuation of the work begun by Gomotan Sangira, whose leadership had ensured that the Subanen people remained grounded in their traditions, even in the face of external threats. While the Subanen were able to maintain much of their traditional way of life, the American presence in Mindanao also brought new opportunities for trade and interaction with other ethnic groups. The construction of roads and the establishment of towns allowed for greater mobility, and the Subanen began to engage more with neighboring communities, both indigenous and non-indigenous. This period of increased interaction, though challenging, also led to the creation of new alliances and relationships that would shape the future of the Subanen people. By the mid-20th century, the Subanen people had faced many challenges, yet their resilience remained a hallmark of their identity. The leadership of the Imbing, Hominis, and Lingating clans continued to be a guiding force, ensuring that the Subanen community remained unified in the face of external pressures. Despite the ongoing presence of colonial powers, the Subanen were able to preserve their autonomy and cultural practices, much as they had done for centuries. The post-World War II era brought further changes to the Subanen people's way of life. The Philippines gained independence from the United States in 1946, but the impact of colonialism was still deeply felt. The Subanen, like many indigenous groups in the region, faced the challenge of navigating the complex dynamics of the new Philippine Republic. During this time, the Subanen people found themselves increasingly drawn into the political and economic changes sweeping across Mindanao. The national government's efforts to integrate the various indigenous groups into the broader Philippine society brought both opportunities and challenges. On the one hand, the Subanen gained greater access to education, healthcare, and infrastructure. On the other hand, the pressures to modernize and assimilate into mainstream Philippine society threatened to erode the cultural foundations that had been so carefully nurtured over generations. The Subanen people, however, remained deeply committed to their cultural heritage. The leadership of the Imbing, Hominis, and Lingating clans continued to play a central role in preserving the Subanen way of life, even as they adapted to the changing political landscape. The values of unity, resilience, and respect for tradition, instilled by Gomotan Sangira, continued to guide the Subanen people as they faced the challenges of the modern world. As the 20th century drew to a close, the Subanen, like many indigenous groups across the Philippines, were confronted with the ongoing struggle to balance their cultural traditions with the demands of the modern world. However, their resilience, shaped by centuries of leadership, unity, and resistance, ensured that their legacy, rooted in the teachings of Gomotan Sangira, would continue to thrive for generations to come. As the 21st century began, the Subanen people, like many other indigenous groups in the Philippines, were at a crossroads. The world around them had changed dramatically over the course of the 20th century, and the pressures of modernity were becoming more pronounced. The expansion of urbanization, the rise of multinational corporations, and the continued impact of government policies all posed challenges to the Subanen way of life. Despite these pressures, however, the legacy of Gomotan Sangira and the strength of the leadership passed down through generations ensured that the Subanen people remained resilient. In the early years of the 21st century, the Subanen faced increasing competition for their lands. Logging, mining, and agricultural expansion in Mindanao brought new external forces into Subanen territories. The natural resources that had once been abundant and provided for the Subanen were now being exploited by both domestic and foreign companies. The Subanen's ancestral lands, which had been passed down through generations, were threatened by encroachment from commercial and industrial ventures. This external pressure led to increased advocacy for land rights, as the Subanen worked to protect their land and preserve their traditional livelihoods. The modern Subanen were no longer isolated from the broader Philippine society. The 21st century brought an era of greater integration into the national framework, with access to education, health services, and other government-provided resources. However, this integration was not without challenges. The Subanen continued to grapple with the balance between maintaining their cultural identity and participating in the modern world. While many young Subanen people sought education and employment opportunities outside of their communities, there was a strong desire to keep their ancestral traditions alive. The values of unity, strength, and cultural preservation that Gomotan Sangira had instilled in his people remained core to the Subanen identity. Despite the challenges posed by external forces, the Subanen people continued to practice their traditional customs, including the buklog ceremony, the sacred ritual that honored their ancestors and their connection to the land. These ceremonies, which had been passed down through generations, remained a central part of Subanen life, providing an anchor in times of change. The buklog allowed the Subanen to reaffirm their commitment to their spiritual and cultural heritage, ensuring that the lessons of the past remained alive in the hearts of future generations. As the Subanen entered the 21st century, they faced growing political and economic challenges. The rapid pace of development in Mindanao, fueled by industrialization and infrastructure projects, put immense pressure on the Subanen way of life. Mining companies, seeking to extract the region's rich natural resources, increasingly encroached upon Subanen land. The destruction of forests, rivers, and agricultural land threatened the Subanen's traditional livelihoods. In response, the Subanen became more active in advocating for their rights. both as indigenous people and as stewards of the land. Land rights became a central issue, as the Subanen sought to protect their ancestral territories from exploitation and degradation. With the assistance of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and indigenous rights groups, the Subanen began to lobby for greater recognition of their land claims and cultural heritage. They fought not only for their physical survival, but also for the preservation of their cultural identity. In addition to land rights, the Subanen people also faced challenges related to governance and political representation. While they had maintained strong leadership structures based on traditional systems, the rise of modern political systems in the Philippines meant that the Subanen were now part of the broader national political landscape. Many Subanen leaders began to seek greater representation within government structures, fighting for policies that would protect their communities and ensure their participation in decisions that affected their lives. Through these struggles, the Subanen people began to engage with the broader political system, advocating for the inclusion of their voices in national debates on indigenous rights, land reform, and environmental protection. Their participation in political processes helped raise awareness about the issues facing indigenous communities in the Philippines, contributing to a wider recognition of their rights. However, the challenges were far from over. The continued encroachment of industrial and governmental interests on Subanen land meant that the fight for land and cultural preservation was ongoing. Still, the Subanen's leadership, rooted in the wisdom and resilience that Gomotan Sangira had established, ensured that they would continue to defend their land and culture. Despite the external challenges and the pressures of modernity, the Subanen people have remained steadfast in their commitment to preserving their cultural heritage. In recent years, there has been a renewed focus on the importance of indigenous languages, cultural traditions, and ancestral practices. The Subanen, particularly the younger generation, have become more engaged in efforts to revitalize and preserve their language, which is a vital part of their cultural identity. Language programs, cultural workshops, and community initiatives have been launched to ensure that the Subanen language and traditions are passed down to future generations. The Subanen people's connection to the land remains central to their identity, and the preservation of their ancestral territories is vital not only for their physical survival, but also for the preservation of their culture. Environmental conservation has become a key issue for the Subanen, as they continue to fight for the protection of their natural resources and traditional farming practices. The fight for land rights has become an integral part of the Subanen struggle, as they work to safeguard their territories from exploitation by logging and mining companies. The legacy of Gomotan Sangira remains a powerful force in the Subanen community. His teachings about leadership, unity, and cultural preservation continue to inspire the Subanen people as they navigate the complexities of the modern world. The Subanen's ability to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining a strong connection to their traditions is a testament to the enduring influence of Gomotan's leadership. His vision for a united and resilient Subanen community continues to guide the people as they face new challenges in the 21st century. In the face of adversity, the Subanen people have shown that they are not just survivors, but a vibrant and dynamic community that is capable of adapting to new realities while remaining firmly rooted in their cultural heritage. The leadership of Gomotan Sangira, which emphasized the importance of strength, wisdom, and unity, has left a lasting imprint on the Subanen people. As they continue to fight for their rights and preserve their culture, they are honoring the legacy of their great ancestor and ensuring that the Subanen way of life will endure for generations to come. The new millennium brought both challenges and opportunities for the Subanen people. As the Philippines entered the 21st century, the government began to implement more policies that recognized the rights of indigenous peoples, particularly through the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, IPRA, of 1997. This legislation granted indigenous communities the legal right to manage their ancestral lands, practice their cultural traditions, and engage in political processes. However, despite these legal advancements, the Subanen people, like many other indigenous groups in the country, still face challenges in asserting and protecting their rights. The increased presence of multinational corporations, such as mining and logging companies, continued to threaten their ancestral lands. The Subanen were increasingly engaged in a battle not just for survival, but for the preservation of their cultural and spiritual identity. The struggles of the Subanen, particularly the defense of their ancestral lands, intensified as the demand for natural resources in Mindanao grew. The rapid expansion of mining activities in the region, including large-scale gold and nickel mining projects, posed an existential threat to the Subanen way of life. The lands the Subanen had lived on for centuries were now being eyed by corporations, many of whom were supported by the Philippine government. The Subanen people, who had always maintained a symbiotic relationship with the land, recognized that the destruction of their forests and rivers would not only harm their environment, but would also sever their deep spiritual connection to the land. In response, Subanen leaders, particularly the descendants of Gomotan Sangira, have organized campaigns and movements to safeguard their land. Community-based organizations have sprung up to raise awareness about the destructive effects of mining and deforestation on Subanen communities. These movements, supported by both local and international NGOs, have called for the enforcement of IPRA, which grants the Subanen the legal right to their ancestral domains. Despite their efforts, the Subanen have found themselves increasingly at odds with both the Philippine government and corporate interests that continue to prioritize economic growth over environmental and indigenous rights. Throughout these struggles, the Subanen have continued to rely on their traditional leadership systems. The Thimuay, as the head of the community, remains an essential figure in organizing resistance and unifying the people. Elders and spiritual leaders continue to play an important role, guiding their communities in both practical and spiritual matters. The leadership structure, established centuries ago by Gomotan Sangira, continues to be a guiding force in the Subanen community. Despite the challenges posed by external pressures, the Subanen people continue to rely on these time-honored systems of governance and spiritual guidance to navigate the complexities of the modern world. The struggle for recognition and the preservation of Subanen rights has also been a battle for cultural survival. The younger generation of Subanen people, while seeking to integrate into modern Philippine society, have also worked hard to maintain their ancestral traditions. There has been a revival of interest in the Subanen language, which had been at risk of disappearing due to the pressures of education in Filipino and English, the country's official languages. Language revitalization programs have been launched to teach young Subanen children their native tongue, ensuring that the language is passed down through generations. In addition to language preservation, the Subanen people have also worked to keep their cultural practices alive. Traditional rituals, such as the buklog and various rites of passage, have been maintained and adapted to the contemporary context. The buklog ceremony, once held solely to honor the spirits of their ancestors, has evolved into a powerful symbol of Subanen resilience. It is not only a spiritual event, but also a public demonstration of the community's commitment to its traditions and its right to protect its lands. Cultural heritage has become an essential part of the Subanen's resistance to cultural assimilation. The younger generation of Subanen, often educated in government schools, has increasingly turned to their elders for guidance in preserving traditional practices. In the face of pressure to modernize, they have found strength in their cultural roots. This movement to preserve Subanen identity is a reflection of the continued legacy of Gomotan Sangira, whose leadership emphasized the importance of cultural preservation alongside military and political strength. This renewed sense of cultural pride has also been reflected in the arts. Traditional Subanen music, dance, and storytelling have experienced a revival. Elders and young artists alike have worked to ensure that these forms of expression are passed down and celebrated. Subanen art has become a way to tell their stories and assert their place in the modern world, creating a bridge between the past and the present. The Subanen continue to find ways to express their identity while navigating the pressures of globalization and colonialism. Despite the challenges, the community's commitment to preserving their heritage remains unbroken. While the 21st century has posed significant challenges for the Subanen, it has also presented opportunities for progress and collaboration. Over the last few decades, the Subanen have forged alliances with other indigenous groups in Mindanao, forming coalitions that advocate for the rights of indigenous peoples. These alliances have allowed them to strengthen their voice in political and legal matters, as well as amplify their resistance to external threats. The Subanen have also received support from national and international human rights organizations, which have helped draw attention to their plight. The Subanen's fight for land rights has gained significant attention in the national discourse, and there have been some victories in terms of legal recognition of their ancestral domains. However, enforcement of the laws protecting indigenous land rights remains a struggle. Despite the legal victories, the Subanen continue to face the threat of displacement as corporations and the government push for development projects in their territories. The Subanen people have also turned to the modern tools of advocacy, such as social media, to raise awareness of their cause. Through online campaigns and international solidarity, they have been able to engage a wider audience and attract global attention to their fight for indigenous rights. While these efforts have not always resulted in immediate success, they have played an important role in raising awareness about the challenges faced by indigenous communities in the Philippines and around the world. Despite the many challenges, the Subanen people remain resilient and determined to protect their land, culture, and way of life. The legacy of Gomotan Sangira, passed down through generations, continues to inspire the Subanen as they face the modern world. His teachings about leadership, strength, and cultural preservation have become a beacon of hope for the Subanen people as they continue to fight for recognition, autonomy, and the right to protect their heritage for future generations. As the 21st century progressed, the Subanen people found themselves increasingly engaged in the broader political landscape of the Philippines. The government, under both local and national leadership, continued to push for economic development in Mindanao, a region rich in natural resources. The Subanen's ancestral lands, historically untouched by large-scale commercial exploitation, became prime targets for mining, logging, and agricultural projects. The Subanen leadership, rooted in the principles passed down by Gomotan Sangira, responded to these threats by becoming more politically active, working not only to protect their land, but also to secure their place in the national conversation on indigenous rights. The political landscape of the Philippines in the early 2000s was marked by significant shifts. The government began to acknowledge the rights of indigenous peoples, in part due to the pressure of grassroots movements and international attention. The passing of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, IPRA, in 1997 had granted indigenous groups the right to manage their ancestral domains, but in practice, the law's enforcement was often uneven. While it provided legal recognition, it did not always protect indigenous communities from the increasing encroachment of external interests. The Subanen people, aware of their vulnerability, used the IPRA as a tool to demand the protection of their lands. Their efforts to assert their rights were often met with resistance, both from corporate entities and local governments that prioritized development over cultural preservation. However, these efforts were not without success. By collaborating with national and international indigenous rights organizations, the Subanen were able to bring greater attention to their plight, pushing for stronger enforcement of IPRA and more meaningful participation in policymaking processes. The Subanen, led by traditional leaders who followed in the footsteps of Gomotan Sangira, used the legal framework provided by the government to challenge the exploitation of their land. They organized protests, lobbied for stronger protections, and pushed for their voices to be heard in national debates on the environment, resource extraction, and indigenous rights. As the Subanen became more politically active, they began to see the benefits of working with other indigenous groups across Mindanao. Through these alliances, they built a stronger presence within the political arena, helping to ensure that indigenous voices were not only heard but acted upon. In addition to the legal and political challenges, the Subanen people also faced the pressures of modernization and global capitalism. As Mindanao's economic landscape evolved, the traditional livelihoods of the Subanen, farming, fishing, and hunting, became increasingly difficult to maintain. The rise of commercial agriculture, particularly palm oil and banana plantations, drastically altered the region's landscape. Large multinational companies, backed by local governments, sought to expand their operations at the expense of indigenous land. In response, the Subanen people, drawing inspiration from the teachings of Gomotan, led resistance movements to reclaim and protect their ancestral domains. One of the most significant struggles for the Subanen in the modern political landscape was the challenge of land reclamation. With the rapid expansion of industrial projects and the encroachment of settlers on their land, the Subanen were at risk of losing control over their ancestral territories. Their response was multifaceted. They employed legal channels to assert their land rights, organized protest movements, and even sought international attention for their cause. These efforts, while sometimes met with government opposition, helped to elevate the Subanen's struggle to the national stage. Throughout this period, the leadership of the Subanen people, particularly from the traditional Thimue and Council of Elders, remained a cornerstone of their resistance. The Subanen leadership, while adapting to the political and economic realities of the 21st century, continued to operate within the framework of their ancestral systems. The role of the Thimue as the custodian of the land and the people's well-being remained critical. Leaders emerged from within the community who upheld the values established by Gomotan, focusing not only on protecting the land, but also on preserving the community's cultural identity. The leadership of Gomotan's descendants continued to inspire new generations to fight for their land and their way of life, demonstrating the enduring strength of his legacy. In the 21st century, the Subanen people also faced challenges in the preservation of their cultural heritage. As younger generations moved to cities for education and work, the traditional knowledge and practices that had sustained the Subanen community for centuries began to fade. The language, ceremonies, and customs that had once been passed down through generations were at risk of disappearing. However, this cultural erosion sparked a renewed interest in revitalizing Subanen traditions. Led by younger Subanen activists and cultural leaders, the Subanen embarked on efforts to preserve their language and cultural practices. The resurgence of interest in Subanen culture was driven in part by the need to maintain a strong sense of identity in the face of external pressures. Efforts were made to document the Subanen language, with community leaders and linguists working together to create materials for teaching the language to young people. Cultural workshops were organized to teach younger generations about Subanen songs, dances, and traditional ceremonies, ensuring that these practices were not lost. The revival of the buklog ceremony, along with other traditional rituals, became a way for the Subanen to reconnect with their past and reaffirm their cultural identity. In parallel with these efforts to preserve culture, the Subanen also became more engaged in modern political advocacy. The rise of social media provided an avenue for the Subanen to raise awareness about their struggles, share their stories, and engage with a wider audience. Through online campaigns and international solidarity, the Subanen gained greater visibility in the global discourse on indigenous rights. This modern platform allowed them to advocate for the protection of their lands and culture, pushing for international recognition of their struggles. Today, the Subanen people remain a testament to the resilience and strength of Gomotan Sangira's leadership. Their ability to adapt to the challenges of the 21st century while preserving their cultural heritage is a testament to the enduring legacy of the Subanen ancestors. The Subanen continue to fight for their land, their culture, and their identity, ensuring that the principles of unity, strength, and cultural preservation passed down by Gomotan will never be forgotten. The modern Subanen people, while facing numerous challenges, remain determined to secure a future that honors the teachings of their great ancestor. The Subanen people have entered the 21st century with a renewed sense of purpose and resilience, drawing strength from the legacy of Gomotan Sangira. The challenges they face today are multifaceted. External pressures from mining and logging industries continue to encroach on their ancestral lands, and the government's push for economic development in Mindanao often conflicts with the Subanen's need to preserve their environment and culture. However, the spirit of Gomotan's leadership, his wisdom, strategic thinking, and determination remains a guiding force for the Subanen. Over the past few decades, the Subanen have intensified their efforts to protect their ancestral territories, advocating for stronger implementation of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, IPRA, and organizing both local and international support for their cause. The creation of community-based organizations, advocacy campaigns, and collaborations with other indigenous groups in Mindanao has allowed the Subanen to present a unified front. The traditional role of the Thimue, chief, in maintaining order, unity, and spiritual well-being remains central to Subanen governance. These leaders have continued to guide their communities, not only in times of external pressure, but also in navigating the complexities of modern life. The traditional Council of Elders, which has been central to Subanen culture for generations, ensures that decisions are made with respect to the values passed down by their ancestors. Despite the external forces that threaten their land, the Subanen continue to defend their territories with both legal action and nonviolent protest. They have been active in courts and public hearings, where they challenge the government and private corporations that seek to exploit their resources. One of the key issues has been the protection of their watersheds and forests, resources that are essential not only for their survival, but also for the biodiversity of Mindanao. While many parts of the Philippines have seen the destruction of natural landscapes due to large-scale mining and deforestation, the Subanen have become vocal advocates for sustainable development, promoting practices that align with their cultural and environmental values. In response to the challenges they face, Subanen youth have become more involved in the preservation of their culture and the protection of their lands. These young leaders, inspired by their ancestors and by the example set by Gomotan Sangira, have taken on significant roles in advocating for land rights, cultural preservation, and environmental justice. Through social media, grassroots movements, and participation in national and international forums, the younger generation is ensuring that the legacy of Gomotan and the Subanen people will continue to shape the future. Alongside their efforts to protect their land and culture, the Subanen are also grappling with the issue of cultural assimilation in a rapidly globalizing world. The younger Subanen generation is increasingly exposed to modern education, technology, and mass media, which can create a disconnect from traditional practices. However, there is a growing movement within the community to bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. Young Subanen people are learning about their heritage while pursuing higher education and participating in the global economy. They are finding ways to incorporate modern knowledge into their cultural practices, ensuring that their identity remains relevant and resilient. Language revitalization has become one of the most significant efforts in preserving Subanen culture. With the help of linguists, cultural organizations, and community leaders, the Subanen language is being taught in schools and passed down through oral traditions. Children are learning their native tongue, and cultural workshops are being organized to teach traditional music, dance, and crafts. This revitalization movement ensures that the Subanen language, which holds the key to understanding their worldview and history, is not lost to future generations. Furthermore, the Subanen continue to honor their spiritual traditions, which have remained at the heart of their community life. The Buklog, the sacred ceremony that honors their ancestors and reaffirms their connection to the land, has been reinvigorated in recent years. It is now a symbol of resistance against the forces that seek to disrupt their way of life, as well as a celebration of the enduring strength of Subanen culture. These ceremonies serve not only to honor their ancestors, but also to renew the commitment of the Subanen people to their land, their traditions, and their community. Through these efforts, the Subanen people are carving out a space for themselves in the modern world, ensuring that they do not lose their identity as they adapt to the changing times. The next generation of Subanen leaders is learning to balance their cultural heritage with the demands of the globalized world, ensuring that they can continue to protect their land and traditions while engaging with modern society. The future of the Subanen people, though filled with challenges, is one of optimism and determination. The ongoing struggle to protect their land and culture has brought the Subanen people together in a way that reflects the unity and strength instilled by Gomotan Sangira. His legacy, which emphasized the importance of leadership, wisdom, and cultural preservation, continues to guide the Subanen through the complexities of modern life. The ability to adapt while remaining rooted in tradition is a hallmark of the Subanen resilience, and it is a quality that will continue to serve them in the future. The Subanen's participation in national and international movements for indigenous rights has also helped amplify their voices on the global stage. They are now seen as leaders in the fight for environmental justice and the protection of indigenous land rights. Their efforts have led to increased awareness about the importance of preserving the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples and their role in protecting biodiversity and natural resources. As the Subanen move forward into the 21st century, they remain committed to the values passed down by Gomotan Sangira. The strength of the Subanen people lies not just in their ability to defend their land, but also in their deep connection to their culture, language, and traditions. This connection forms the bedrock of their community, and it is the foundation upon which future generations will build. In honoring Gomotan's legacy, the Subanen people are not only preserving their past, but also shaping a brighter future. They are committed to continuing their fight for land, rights, and cultural preservation, ensuring that the lessons of their ancestors are passed down to those who will lead them into the future. Through their unity, resilience, and commitment to tradition, the Subanen will continue to thrive, just as they have for centuries. At the heart of Subanen identity lies a profound connection to the land. This relationship with nature has shaped the Subanen people for centuries, influencing their social structures, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. Gomotan Sangira, in his leadership, not only defended the Subanen's territory, but also ensured that respect for the environment was embedded in the very fabric of their way of life. This connection to nature continues to be a fundamental aspect of Subanen existence, especially in the face of modern pressures. The Subanen people's relationship with the environment is rooted in their traditional agricultural practices, which are based on sustainability and harmony with nature. Unlike large-scale industrial farming that often depletes natural resources, the Subanen have relied on shifting cultivation and agroforestry, methods that allow the land to regenerate over time. These methods, passed down from their ancestors, are seen as a way to live in balance with the earth. Gomotan's teachings about respecting the land are still honored in the Subanen approach to farming. The forests, rivers, and mountains are considered sacred, and their preservation is vital not only for the Subanen's survival, but also for maintaining the region's biodiversity. In the 21st century, the Subanen are increasingly aware of the environmental threats posed by large-scale mining, deforestation, and land conversion projects. These activities, driven by global demand for resources, have placed immense pressure on Mindanao's ecosystems. The Subanen, whose lands are rich in natural resources, are now at the forefront of efforts to protect their environment. They are actively engaged in advocating for environmental stewardship, not just for their own benefit, but also for the preservation of the region's biodiversity, which supports many indigenous communities and non-indigenous groups alike. The Subanen have taken up the cause of environmental protection, building coalitions with other indigenous groups and environmental organizations to challenge destructive industries. They are now leading the fight against mining companies that seek to exploit their lands, advocating for sustainable practices that respect both the land and the people who rely on it. The Subanen's activism in the environmental field has brought them into direct conflict with powerful corporate interests. Mining companies, particularly those seeking to extract gold, nickel, and other minerals from the rich lands of Mindanao, have consistently attempted to negotiate for access to Subanen territories. These companies, supported by the Philippine government, often promise economic benefits in exchange for land use, but their operations have long-term negative consequences for the environment. The Subanen people, guided by the teachings of Gomotan Sangira, view this encroachment as a direct threat to their spiritual and cultural connection to the land. In response, the Subanen have employed a variety of strategies to resist these incursions. They have organized protests, petitioned the government, and taken legal action in an effort to preserve their ancestral domains. Their advocacy for environmental rights is grounded in a strong sense of justice, as they believe that their right to the land is not only a matter of cultural preservation, but also of ecological survival. The land, to the Subanen, is not merely property, but a living entity that sustains them physically and spiritually. The Subanen also work in partnership with other indigenous groups in Mindanao and the broader Philippines to strengthen their collective voice. These collaborations have made a significant impact in raising awareness about the environmental destruction caused by extractive industries and the need to adopt more sustainable practices. The Subanen's resistance to environmental degradation has been supported by national and international organizations that advocate for the protection of indigenous rights and the environment. Through these alliances, the Subanen have been able to amplify their message, garnering attention from lawmakers, the media, and global environmental advocacy groups. Furthermore, the Subanen continue to practice sustainable farming methods, ensuring that their traditional land management systems are preserved and adapted to modern challenges. These methods, rooted in centuries of experience, offer an alternative to the industrial farming practices that have led to soil erosion, loss of biodiversity, and water contamination in other parts of the country. The Subanen's environmental stewardship efforts are not only about resistance, but also about proactive efforts to ensure that future generations can continue to live in harmony with nature. They have implemented community-led conservation projects that focus on preserving key ecosystems such as rivers, forests, and watersheds. These projects are designed to promote sustainable agricultural practices, reduce the impact of deforestation, and conserve the natural resources that are essential to the Subanen way of life. In the face of climate change, which is having an increasing impact on weather patterns and agriculture in Mindanao, the Subanen have also become advocates for climate justice. They are raising awareness about the disproportionate impact of environmental degradation on indigenous communities, who are often the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. By combining traditional knowledge with modern environmental science, the Subanen are working to build resilience in their communities and reduce the negative impacts of climate change. One of the most significant challenges that the Subanen face today is the pressure to integrate into mainstream Philippine society without losing their cultural identity. The younger generation of Subanen is increasingly educated and engaged in the modern world, yet they are also committed to preserving their traditions and values. The leadership of the Subanen, including the descendants of Gomotan Sangira, continues to guide the community through these transitions. While the younger generation is more connected to the outside world, they remain deeply committed to the principles of sustainability, justice, and environmental stewardship that their ancestors upheld. The Subanen people's ability to adapt while staying rooted in their culture, their land, and their traditions is a testament to the enduring strength of their heritage. The fight for environmental justice, land rights, and cultural preservation is not just about the Subanen, but about ensuring a sustainable future for all who share the land with them. As they continue their advocacy for the environment, the Subanen's connection to nature remains a central part of their identity and a source of strength in the face of modern challenges. Now that you've heard the incredible journey of Gomotan Sangira and the Subanen people, the moral of the story is clear. Leadership is not just about power, but about unity, resilience, and the protection of culture and land for future generations. Gomotan's legacy teaches us that true greatness lies not in conquering others, but in preserving what matters most: our heritage, values, and the deep connection to our land. Today, as we face modern challenges, the Subanen remind us of the importance of staying grounded in our roots and standing up for what is right, no matter the obstacles. Their story is a beacon of hope for anyone fighting to preserve their culture, protect their environment, and honor their ancestors. If you enjoyed this history, don't forget to subscribe to History Teller YT and stay tuned for more captivating stories from the past. Join us next time as we explore more legends and dive deep into the untold stories of the world.